Vad sa du?
Ska man ha en bok framför sig eller?
Ja, om du har det.
Ska se om jag hittar det.
Tog lite. Jag tror du hade karthalsning. I'll take. So you have a mridanga here.
But it's a little bit broken. Now it sounds fine. But it's pieces of metal.
Aha, the clay. Yeah.
I believe it.
Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Radha Jai Vishnu Pad Pram Supavijikishara Sarasate Si Bhakti Vedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Vishnu Pad Pram Supavijikishara Sarasate Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinatha Shyama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Mathura Dhamma Ki Jai. Navadipa Dhamma Ki Jai. Mayapur Dhamma Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dhamma Ki Jai. Jagannath Swami Ki Jai. Vrindavana Dhamma Ki Jai. Gangam Namai Ki Jai. Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Gaura Premananda. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to Saint devotees, all glories to Saint devotees, all glories to Saint devotees, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Guranga, all glories to His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prasthaya Bhutali, Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamiti Namini, Namaste Saraswati Devi, Guruvani Prachani, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Praschatya Desha Tarine. So, you're streaming?
Yes.
Yeah. So today we are reading the Sri Isopanisad, mantra number 7. And because, this is only once a month and we lose maybe the track of which verse we read last time, I will read just once all the Bhagavate Vasudevaya Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so we go through these verses. So invocation. Åkallelse på svenska, eller hur?
Mantra 1 eller?
Nej, åkallelse. Innen.
Ännu längre fram?
Nej, längre bak. Alltså, ja, längre fram, ja.
Jag förstår. Okej. Mm.
Om Purnam... Vi kan sjunga tillsammans. Om Purnam Madaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. So this invocation says that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is complete, whole and complete, and everything which emanates from the Lord is also perfect and complete. Like this material creation goes on by itself in a perfect way, the earth goes on in a perfect way, and everything which emanates from the Lord is complete unity and a complete balance. Mantra 1. Ishavashyam idam sarvam. You got it? Mantra 1.
Va?
Mantra 1.
Okej, ska vi...
Ja, sjunga tillsammans. Ishavasyam idam sarvam yatkincha jagatyam jagat. Vi sjunger tillsammans. Vi reciterar tillsammans.
Okej.
Börja från början. Ishavasyam idam sarvam yatkincha jagatyam jagat. Tena tyaktena bhunjitaha magrida kasyasi dhanam. So this mantra 1 actually gives the name to Isopanisad. It starts with Isha, which means the Supreme Lord. So Isha Upanishad. And this mantra teaches us about the Ishavasyam principle, which means that everything is owned and controlled by the Lord. This is the basic understanding. And we have a quota in this world, and that's our quota, and we should be satisfied with that. We should not accept other things knowing well that they belong to the Supreme Lord. Mantra number 2. Kurvaneveha karmani jijivech chatam samaha evam tvai nanyatetosti na karma lipyate nare. So this mantra says, if one understands that everything is owned and controlled by the Lord, and if one is able to live in this consciousness, you can live in this material world forever, because you will not accumulate any karma, because of your pure consciousness. And it also says there is no alternative for man. Mantra 3. Asurya namate loka andhena tamasavritaha tamste pritya bigachanti yake chatmano hano janaha. So this is about the killer of the soul. It's an interesting couple of words, because we say that the soul cannot be killed. So how can you be a killer of the soul? So what is understood here is that a killer of the soul is a person who proposes godlessness, who proposes atheism, and who proposes philosophies which are antagonistic to the Supreme Lord. So these persons, whoever they may be, it's said here, they will be forever in darkness. Tamasaha, darkness, ignorance, in planets filled of ignorance. Asurya, this is not a kind verse for these people. Verse number 4. Aneja dekan manaso javyo naina deva apnuvam purvam ashat tadhavato niyam matiti tishtat tasmin apo matrashvri dadhati. So the Lord, although fixed in his own abode and never moves, still is quicker than the mind. And although he is in one place, he can control everything within the universe. So here in this verse, it's starting to give us a little bit of the qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now we go on to mantra number 5. Tade jati tadnai jati tadure tadvantike tadantara sarvasya tadu sarvasyasya bhahyata. The Supreme Lord walks and does not walk. He is far away and is very near. He is within everything and he is without everything. Very beautiful verse. This is one of my favorite verses, because it explains that we cannot reduce the Lord to our material mundane concept. So the Lord does not walk. Why? Because he's not a material personality who walks like us. But at the same time he walks. Why? Because he can instantly move himself anywhere within the creation. He's far away from us because he's in Vaikuntha, Krishna Loka, but at the same time he's here, he's within our hearts. He's within everything, like the Paramatma, and simultaneously is above everything. Is in his abode, controlling everything. It's a very beautiful verse. Mantra number 6. Yastu sarvani bhutani atmani evanupashyate sarvabhuteshu chatmanam tatotana vijugupshate. So now, after explaining the wonderful qualities of the Lord, the Isopanisad starts to explain a little bit about how should we try to understand the Lord, and who is able to understand the Lord, and which are the characteristics of those who are able to understand the Lord. So here in this verse, the translation by Srila Prabhupada is, he who sees everything in relation to the Supreme Lord, and who sees all the living entities as his parts and parcel, and who sees the Supreme Lord within everything, he never hates anything nor any being. This would be a good verse for the modern world. Never hates anything nor any being. People would need to practice this a little bit. So here in this verse, which is the previous verse from the verse we're going to read today, there is 3 important points. First of all, a person who is realized, who has understood Krishna, who has understood the Supreme Lord, he sees everything in relation with the Supreme Lord. He sees a tree. The tree is beautiful. Why is it beautiful? You know, it was created by Krishna. Please take a seat. This is number 1. He sees everything in relation to the Supreme Lord. And then, next thing, he sees all living entities as parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, it is said here in this purport that a saintly person, he doesn't differentiate between a dog and a brahmana. Of course, he sees the difference, but he sees that within the brahmana, the body of a brahmana, there is a spirit soul. Within the body of a dog is also spirit soul. So he sees this on the same level, without discrimination. And therefore he doesn't hate anybody, because everybody is in the position they are. And then the third characteristic, he sees the Supreme Lord within everything. So it's a little bit related with the relation, but here is like within everything. Okay, so now today we're going to mantra number 7. So we're going to read the word by word, and we can read together. If you can get access to the text, you can sit a little near. Yasmin Sarvani Bhutani Atma Eva Abhut Vijanataha Tatra Ka Moha Ka Shoka Ekatvam Anupashyataha Yasmin Sarvani Bhutani Yasmin Sarvani Bhutani Atmaeva Bhut Vijanataha Atmaeva Bhut Vijanataha Tatra ko moha ka shoka Tatra ko moha ka shoka Ekatvam anupashyataha Ekatvam anupashyataha Yasmin Sarvani Bhutani Atma Vaibhut Vijanataha Tatra ko moha ka shoka Ekatvam anupashyataha Yasmin Sarvani Bhutani Atma Vaibhut Vijanataha Tatra ko moha ka shoka Ekatvam anupashyataha Yasmin Sarvani Bhutani Atma Vaibhut Vijanataha Tatra ko moha ka shoka Ekatvam anupashyataha. You want to read? Somebody?
Yasmin sarvani bhutani.
Yasmin sarvani bhutani.
Atmaiva bhut vijanataha.
Atmavaibhut vijanataha.
Tatra ko moha kashoka.
Tatra ko mohaka shoka.
Ekatam anupashyataha.
Ekatvam anupashyataha. Mohini, you are the expert in the Isopanisad. Yasmin sarvani bhutani. Atmava budjinataha. Tatra ko mohaka shoka. Ekatvam anupashyataha. Somebody else? Agudi.
Yasmin sarvani bhutani.
Yasmin sarvani bhutani.
Atmaiva bhut vijanataha.
Atmavaibhut vijanataha.
Tatra ko moha kashoka.
Tatra ko mohaka shoka.
Ekatvam anupashyataha.
Ekatvam anupashyataha. Anybody else? Yasmin. In the situation. Sarvani. All. Bhutani. Living entities. Atma. The spiritual spark. Eva. Only. Abhut. Exists. No, sorry. Exist as. Vijanataha. Of one who knows. Tatra. Therein. Kaha. What? Moha. Illusion. Kaha. What? Shoka. Anxiety. Ekatvam. Oneness in quality. Anupashyataha. Of one who sees through authority. Or one who sees constantly like that. One interesting word here is kaha. This ko-a-ha. Why is it interesting? This is the first word pronounced in this universe. When Lord Brahma was created by Lord Vishnu, he climbed up the stem of a lotus flower and he sat on the lotus flower to meditate. And he said, Kaha. It means, I'm here. Where did I come from? It's an interesting point. Very short word. Okay, so the translation. One who always sees all living entities as spiritual sparks, in quality one with the Lord, becomes a true knower of things. What then can be illusion or anxiety for him? So please repeat after me. One who always sees all living entities as spiritual sparks, in quality one with the Lord, becomes a true knower of things. What then can be illusion or anxiety for him? So the purport. I took a little bit notes on the purport before we start to get there. And this purport is a lot about oneness, ekatvam, which is a subject maybe we don't touch so much into Vaishnava philosophy because of its connections with Mayavadi, but it's still there. So this word in this verse, ekatvam. So the word ekatvam means like oneness, the quality of oneness. So here in this 7th verse, there is 6 paragraphs. So in the first paragraph, which we're going to read now, Srila Prabhupada is going to explain about the oneness between energy and the energetic. So we're going to read this. So purport by Srila Prabhupada. But for the Madhyama Adhikari and Uttama Adhikari discussed above, no one can correctly see the spiritual position of a living being. The living entities are qualitatively one with the Supreme Lord, just as the sparks of a fire are qualitatively one with the nature of the fire. Yet sparks are not fire as far as quantity is concerned, for the quantity of heat and light present in the sparks is not equal to that of the fire. The Mahabhagavat, the great devotee, sees oneness in the sense that he sees everything as the energy of the Supreme Lord. Since there is no difference between the energy and the energetic, there is the sense of oneness. Although heat and light, from the analytical point of view, are different from fire, there is no meaning to the word fire without heat and light. But in synthesis, heat, light, and fire are all the same. So, the Supreme Personality of Godhead has three energies, which probably most of us know about it. This is the internal energy, which is called Antaranga Shakti. Antar means inside, Antaranga Shakti. And by this energy, Krishna maintains all the devotees. He maintains the spiritual world. And basically that, which is not so little. If we speak about the whole spiritual world. Then there is the external energy, which is the created universes, not only our universe, but this unlimited amount of universes which constitute this material creation. This is the external energy. And this is called Bahiranga Shakti. And then there is the third energy of the Lord, which is called the marginal energy, or in Sanskrit is called Tatashta Shakti. And this Tatashta Shakti, this marginal energy, is us, all the living entities. All the souls belong, I'm not exactly correct, because there is souls which never become under the influence of matter. But in general, for us who exist here in this material world, we belong to the Tatashta Shakti, marginal potency. And why? Tatashta, in Sanskrit, it means the shore. It's neither the ocean nor the land. Sometimes is land, sometimes is sea, according to how the sea, sea is growing or diminishing. So, we, the living entities, we can be sometimes under the influence of the spiritual energy, and other times under the influence of the material energy. So therefore we are called Tatashta Shakti. And of course, what we try to do when we engage in spiritual life, it's try to become free from the material energy and try to come under the influence of the spiritual energy. This is our endeavor for all of us. We are born in this world, we have a material body, we have to a great degree a material consciousness, but still our spiritual part, our soul, our spiritual spark belongs to the spiritual world. And when we start the spiritual process, we try to understand how that, which is my actually self, how that can connect to the spiritual world again. So this is the gift of Srila Prabhupada to us. He gave us all these different instructions by which we can engage in devotional service and gradually return to the spiritual energy. So the point here is it's a little bit in the spirit of the earlier verses of the Isopanisad. Okay, the Supreme Lord is one. He's situated in his own abode, but by his energies, he controls everything. Srila Prabhupada used to give the example of a man who owns a factory. Maybe he, the employers cannot see him, or the customers cannot see him. But still, because he owns the factory, he controls the board, and he controls everything which is happening in that factory. Or the government. We don't see the government. At least I never saw anybody from the government. But they are there, and they are doing so many things, and they are controlling us. Many people also say that there is a shadow government. Did you hear about this?
So this government?
Shadow.
But did you talk about government?
Government.
Oh, yeah.
So these governments which are there, they're just puppets. Yeah? You say dance, you support Russia, you dance. You support America, you support this and support that. They're just puppets. It's a theory. Actually, I believe on it a little bit when I see their behavior. Shadow government. And it's becoming more and more evident how this...
Who is the shadow?
Shadow, you don't see them. They
Controlling them.
they put the president and they tell him, you do this, you do that, you do that. Now it's COVID, everybody's going to get sick. You shut everybody in their apartments, you give them medicines, and don't do anything else.
Putin said about that thing.
Probably, I don't know.
He said that Biden was being controlled by people telling him what to do and how to act.
Yeah? Mm.
They were wearing black suits.
I believe there is something like that. But anyway, we just keep on the philosophical aspect. That we don't see the Supreme Lord, but everything in this universe is working, and this is his energy. And he is not separated from his energies. This is an important thing to understand. Sometimes, like the impersonalists, they say that this material world is illusion. Doesn't exist. It just exists because, it's like a hallucination. But Vaishnavas don't say that. They say the material world exists, it's temporary, but it exists, and it's an energy of the Supreme Lord. And therefore it's real. Okay? So now we go for, and this example here of the light is very interesting actually, of the sparks, because Srila Prabhupada used spiritual sparks in translation, because the living entity, originally, all of us, believe it or not, have at one point been in the spiritual world. There's been a great controversy in ISKCON, once upon a time, regarding the origin of the jiva. I don't know if you ever heard about this. But this discussion was based on, Srila Prabhupada said once, at least, I know, in Australia, he said that actually all of us, we are in this material world, we come originally from the spiritual world. There is others who say that the souls were inactive, like sleeping, and Mahavishnu in one creation wakes them up and brings them to activity. Srila Prabhupada didn't support this theory. Srila Prabhupada said that we all originally came from the spiritual world. We are always in the spiritual world in association with Krishna, but we chose to leave the spiritual world and to come to this material world. Of course, when we chose to leave the spiritual world, we didn't understand exactly what it meant. Sometimes you have a child and they want to leave home. They want to live on their own. But they don't understand. They have to pay rent, they have to work, they have to cook, they have to clean, they have to pay all the bills. And just mentioning this because I had a discussion with my daughter. She would like me to move from home, but she understands many things. So when the soul kind of chooses, it's not an exact choice, it's more like a fall down from the spiritual world. The soul doesn't fully understand what it means. So the soul is in the spiritual world, and because there is this freedom of thought, freedom of consciousness, at one point the soul starts to contemplate. I mean, Krishna is in the center. Why is this? Why maybe not in the center, or maybe not somebody else in the center? So his consciousness starts to get polluted. And this is due to our freedom, because if we were not free to question, our love for Krishna would also not have any value. We would be robots. Yeah? I mean, we would be prisoners in the spiritual world. You cannot leave. But this possibility is there, that one starts to think, maybe I would like to have a little bit my own life without all this Krishna in the center all the time. So it starts very subtly, the contamination. And then it comes to one point where actually one's consciousness becomes polluted and one has to leave the material world. One thing we have to understand, which is important to understand in spiritual life, our consciousness brings always us where we are. We can change our life 100% immediately here and now by changing our consciousness. If you here and now decided, I want to understand Krishna, I want to become a servant of Krishna, I want to go back to the spiritual world. And if you actually make that commitment in consciousness, then everything will just happen. It's quite amazing. And actually I remember this was one of the first understandings I had in Krishna consciousness, that just by desiring to come in contact with Krishna, Krishna just makes the road for you, prepares everything. So this is very important to understand, the power of desire. And actually, Srila Prabhupada in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, in the first, I think even the first chapter, he says there is just one price of the ticket for the spiritual world. And this is our sincerity, our desire, our eagerness to go to the spiritual world. There is no other requirements. So we go now to the second paragraph, which explains that, so here in the first paragraph it's said that we are one with the Supreme Lord. And now it's going to explain how we are one with the Supreme Lord. And the conclusion is that we are one with the Supreme Lord in quality, but not in quantity. So the Sanskrit words ekatvam anupashyati indicate that one should see the unity of all living entities from the viewpoint of revealed scriptures. The individual sparks of the Supreme Whole possess almost 80% of the known qualities of the whole, but they are not quantitatively equal to the Supreme Lord. So this means that we, the living entities, the jivas, we can have up to 80% of the qualities of the Lord. The Lord is independent, the Lord is resourceful, the Lord has power, wealth, renunciation. So we can have all these up to 80% of the qualities of the Supreme Lord. But we will have all these qualities in a very small degree. So Krishna owns the whole universe. Maybe we can earn, now there is many billionaires. 9 zeros. So now there is billionaires, okay, so they earn 1 billion or 20 billion or whatever. But still, I mean, what is that comparing with owning the whole universe? The whole planetary system, millions of universes, spiritual world, everything. So we can have some of these qualities of Krishna, 80%. If you want to find out about the qualities of Krishna, I don't know by heart, but there is a book which is called The Nectar of Devotion, and there are explained the 64 qualities of Krishna. It's very beautiful to read if you have access to that book. It's translated in Sweden. In Swedish, it's called Hängivenhetens Nektar, but there is also in English. These qualities are present in minute quantity, for the living entity is but a minute part and parcel of the Supreme Whole. To use another simile, the quantity of salt present in a drop of water is never compared to the quantity of salt present in the complete ocean. But the salt present in the drop is qualitatively equal in chemical composition to all the salt present in the ocean. If the individual living being were equal to the Supreme Lord, both qualitatively and quantitatively, there would be no question of his being under the influence of material energy. So, if there was no difference in quantity, we would be God. And then we would not be in this material world, accepting material body and going through so many difficulties and sufferings. So in the previous mantras, it has been already discussed that no living being, not even powerful demigods, can surpass the supreme being in any respect. Therefore, ekatvam does not mean that the living entity is equal in all respects to the Supreme Lord. It does, however, indicate that in a broader sense, there is one interest. Just as in a family, the interest of all members is one, or in a nation, the national interest is one, although there are many different individual citizens. The living entities are all parts and parcels of the Supreme Family, and the interest of the Supreme Being and that of the parts and parcels is not different. Every living being is the son of the Supreme Being. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, all living entities, all living creatures throughout the universe, including birds, reptiles, ants, aquatics, trees, and so on, are emanations of the marginal potency of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, all of them belong to the family of the Supreme Being. There is no clash of interest in spiritual life. So when we speak about the soul, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. So when we speak about the soul, what are we talking about? We're talking about eternal, full of bliss, and full of knowledge. We thought that nobody would come, and everybody is here. I started with 2 people. Welcome. So what are we talking about when we speak about oneness? We're speaking that we are eternal, the Supreme Lord is eternal. We are full of knowledge, Supreme Lord is full of knowledge. Supreme Lord is full of bliss, we are also full of bliss. But there is a big difference between how we interpret this word ekatvam and how the Mayavadis interpret. It's that we say that we are different in quantity. The Mayavadis don't make this, Dimitri, you could get me a little water? Thank you. The Mayavadis don't make this difference clear.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
It says that we will go through different bodies and struggle a lot. When will we stop struggling? And why are we struggling?
Why are we struggling?
And when will we stop struggling?
Good question.
It's a very good question.
It's a good question.
Here it's given this example that
Excuse me. If we can hear the question.
You didn't hear. Can you say a little louder?
Well, it says that we will go through different bodies in our lifetime and struggle. And I was wondering when we will stop struggling and why we're struggling.
Okay.
It's a very good question, and actually the explanation is here in this paragraph. So what Srila Prabhupada explains here, that there is a fire. So there's this comparison that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is like a fire, and we are like sparks. So, thank you very much.
Like, have we done something bad to be...
Wait 1 second. So, when the spark is near the fire, it's bright. When it goes away from the fire and lands on the earth, it extinguishes and it becomes black and cold. So when the living entities are connected to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they are qualities which I just mentioned of eternality, knowledge, and bliss. They are fully present. When we separate ourselves from the Supreme Lord, when we distance ourselves, then we become more and more of the influence of material nature. And then we forget that we are eternal, we distance from our knowledge, and then we become influenced by misery instead of bliss. Okay? So the soul has these three qualities. It's eternal, full of knowledge, and full of bliss.
And the third one is Hare Krishna.
Sorry?
And the first one is Hare Krishna, right?
Again?
The first one is Hare Krishna, right?
No, I said the spirit soul,
Yeah.
this is all of us.
Oh, okay.
We have these three qualities. We are eternal, full of knowledge, and full of bliss.
Okay.
Krishna also has these qualities, but we have them in very small degree, and Krishna has them in unlimited degree.
So we will struggle and struggle and struggle. When will we become more aware of Krishna? And even if we refuse to see him, what happens?
If
If people refuse to see him,
if people refuse to see Krishna,
exactly, and struggle, would there be an end for them?
this is your personal choice. This is a little bit what we were speaking about before. If you have, that I mentioned this, which Srila Prabhupada says in the beginning of Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is another book, and he says the ticket for us to the spiritual world is our sincerity. So at the moment you start to want to see Krishna and to want to connect to Krishna and understand Krishna and possibly also serve Krishna, at that moment Krishna is within your heart. You'll prepare everything for you to approach Krishna.
What are the signs that if I approach Krishna, what are the signs?
What are the signs? What are the signs when you already have approached Krishna, or
When I will approach him. When I already have also.
I mean, spiritual life starts with desire. Yeah? So, desire means that you start to question, what I'm actually doing in this material world. Is this everything? Is there something beyond this material world? How did everything start? Is there a God? Where is He? How can I connect with God? So you start to make all these questions inside of you. Yeah? And then when you do that, and you take up a spiritual path, like here we teach about Krishna consciousness the way we learned it from Srila Prabhupada, then there is a process. We execute different things, like we have something which is our most basic practice, which is mantra meditation. We meditate on the Hare Krishna mantra. And and there is many other processes, and you start to follow. And what happens when you follow these processes is that your consciousness becomes spiritualized. And you start to see Krishna everywhere. Is it a good answer? Not fully, eh?
How do I see him everywhere?
Normally, we cannot strive to see Krishna, but we can act in such a way that,
Him, right?
that Krishna wants to see us. Actually, the main ingredient in spiritual life, and which is the initial ingredient, is our sincerity.
So our kindness and our ability to feel another.
This is also part of it. In our Vaishnava culture, we have a principle which is called Paradukha Dukhi, Parasukha Sukhi. That means a Vaishnava is happy when the others are happy, and is unhappy when the others are unhappy. So this is also there. But this comes like a consequence of you developing your Krishna consciousness and connecting to Krishna. It's not like it doesn't happen before. It can happen before to a certain extent, but generally it happens when you already develop Krishna consciousness, you understand all the others are spiritual sparks. This is exactly the verse today, which says, one who always sees all living entities as spiritual sparks, in quality one with the Lord, becomes a true knower of things. What then can be illusion or anxiety for him?
Nothing.
Exactly. So I will go on here with third paragraph, which says, oneness in interest brings happiness. And Srila Prabhupada speaks a little bit about family and nation. This is search. Yeah, this is. So spiritual entities are meant for enjoyment. By nature and constitution, every living being, including the Supreme Lord, and each part and parcel, is meant for eternal enjoyment. The living beings who are encaged in the material tabernacle are constantly seeking enjoyment, but they are seeking it on the wrong platform. Apart from this material world, there is the spiritual platform, where the Supreme Being enjoys himself with his innumerable associates. On that platform, there is no trace of material qualities, and therefore, that platform is called Nirguna. On the Nirguna platform, there is never a clash over the object of enjoyment. Here in the material world, there is always a clash between different individual beings, because here the proper center of enjoyment is missed. So the real center of enjoyment is the Supreme Lord, who is the center of the sublime and spiritual rasa dance. We are all meant to join him and enjoy life with one transcendental interest and without any clash. That is the high platform of spiritual interest. And as soon as one realizes this perfect form of oneness, there can be no question of illusion or lamentation. So this paragraph explains a little bit why we have conflicts in this material world. Because we do not see the interest of the Lord. We see our separate interests. We see I have my own interest and my neighbor has an opposite interest, and I want to fulfill my interest and my neighbor wants to fulfill his interest, and therefore becomes a clash. In the spiritual world, all the living entities work together for the pleasure of Krishna, and therefore there is harmony. I'll move on to the fourth paragraph, which explains a little bit about the reasons of unhappiness. A godless civilization arises from Maya or illusion, and the result of such a civilization is lamentation. A godless civilization, such as that sponsored by the modern politicians, is always full of anxieties. That is the law of nature. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 7:14, no one but those who surrender to the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord can surpass the stringent laws of nature. Thus, if you wish to get rid of all sorts of illusion and anxiety and create unity out of all diverse interests, we must bring God in all our activities. So, again, this purport, this paragraph explains us that illusion, as it is called in Sanskrit, Maya, arises from a godless civilization. So one excludes God from, how to say, from one's consciousness. Like one says often that the materialists, they try to create the kingdom of God. You know, people love each other, respect each other, but we remove God. God is not needed. But we see where actually this kind of philosophy has led us. You just look around in the material world and you see what is going on earth and how well they try to create, how do you say, paradise without God. And you see that this creates so many problems. Like when the human beings, they try to control nature and they don't understand that God is actually the proprietor of nature. And this is not our nature. We are just given this to administrate, and we borrow it. So when people act in such consciousness, it just creates so much havoc. So now here, so in the last paragraphs, so it's explaining becoming one in interest with the Supreme Lord. So the results of our activities must be used to serve the interests of the Lord and not for any other purpose. Only by serving the Lord's interest can we perceive the Atmabhuta interest mentioned herein. The Atmabhuta interest mentioned in this mantra and the Brahmabhuta interest mentioned in Bhagavad Gita 1854 are one and the same. The Supreme Atma or Soul is the Lord Himself, and the minute Atma is the living entity. The Supreme Atma or Paramatma alone maintains all the individual minute beings, for the Supreme Lord wants to derive pleasure out of their affection. The Father extends Himself through His children and maintains them in order to derive pleasure. If the children are obedient to the Father's will, family affairs will run smoothly with one interest and a pleasing atmosphere. The same situation is transcendental arranged in the absolute family of the Para-Brahman, or the Supreme Spirit. So here there is a reference to one verse in Bhagavad Gita, which is 1854. Brahma bhuta prasatma nashochachi nakankshati. This verse says one person who is situated on the platform of Brahman, who is transcendentally situated, for such a person, there is no nasochati, no lamentation, and no hankering, nakankshati. And Srila Prabhupada says here something which is quite interesting. He says that the Atma Bhuta, that means the platform of the soul, and the platform of Brahman, Brahmabhuta, mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, they are one and the same. Why? Because if us as living entities, if we understand that our interest is the interest of the Lord, then it doesn't become like we don't become separated from the Lord. We understand that our interest is the same as the Lord. So this is a quite interesting point that actually I never saw before in Prabhupada's books. Atma Bhuta and Brahma Bhuta, they are actually the same. So the Para-Brahman is as much a person as the individual entities. Neither the Lord nor the living entities are impersonal. Such transcendental personalities are full of transcendental bliss, knowledge, and eternal life. That is the real position of spiritual existence, and as soon as one is fully cognizant of this transcendental position, he at once surrenders unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Being, Sri Krishna. But such a Mahatma, a great soul, is very rarely seen, because such transcendental realization is achieved only after many, many births. Once attained, however, there is no longer any illusion or distress or the miseries of the material existence or birth and death, which are all experienced in our present life. That is the information we receive from this mantra of Sri Isopanisad. So, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Para-Brahman, as Srila Prabhupada uses the word here, is a person. So neither the Lord nor the living entities are impersonal. And one actually realizes that one is a person and the Supreme Lord is a person, then actually devotional service to the Supreme Lord becomes possible. Because we understand that, actually Srila Prabhupada explains this in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, that love is actually possible only between two entities of the same quality. So when we understand that we are persons, we are spiritual living entities, and the Supreme Lord is also a spiritual living entity, and that we are connected with Him, then actually we can start to approach devotional service and try to serve the Supreme Person and develop ourselves spiritually. So I've been going on quite long, so more than 1 hour, so I finished now. You want to make any questions or comments? I want to welcome Tatvavada Prabhu Mangalavati. Nice to see you. Oi.
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
So, as I understand, in spiritual world we have some position, as you talked today. So we go to material world for some time and then we go back. The question is, do we go back to the same position, or is it possible to change the position?
I mean, I don't know. There's been a lot of controversies about these things because these are the kind of problems which are a little bit beyond us. As I mentioned during the lecture, Srila Prabhupada mentioned in Australia that actually all of us come from the spiritual world. I never saw Srila Prabhupada, at least when he was giving a lecture or something, mentioning this theory which exists even in some Vaishnava circles, that we are inert living entities, and at one point we were woken up by Mahavishnu and we restarted our activities. So Srila Prabhupada said we all came originally from the spiritual world and we have fallen down. And I actually was discussing once with a person who had this opinion that we are actually being inert. And then, I don't know, somehow it dawned up to me, but then why Srila Prabhupada call his magazine Back to Godhead? I mean, if we didn't come from Godhead, why back to Godhead? But the thing is like this. We have something which is called Svarupa. Okay? This Svarupa, this is our eternal form. And I can say as much as that in general, this Svarupa does not change. But I can also say that it's not impossible that this Svarupa changes. Because the living entity is never static. So even if one is in a position, in a relationship with Krishna, the possibility of this relationship changing, like I think there is even examples of changing from Shanta rasa to Dasya rasa. I'm not sure if it's the Kumaras. There is an example. I think it's even the Kumaras. But there is examples in the Srimad Bhagavatam of changing from Dasya rasa to from Shanta rasa to Dasya rasa. So the yogi meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead in a neutral relationship may at one point become inspired to start serving the Supreme Lord. But in general, we maintain our Svarupa because this is our constitutional position and we are satisfied in that position. So therefore, if we are satisfied, we don't feel an impetus to look for other types of relationship with the Supreme Lord. But I know it is possible. So the general case is that we don't change. Anything else? That's Father
I
Prabhu.
didn't heard him his question fully, but the question related to our original position, that is the whole book with Swaka Maharaj, Ridan Maharaj, and a few saints they did. So that says clearly that there is spiritual world here and material world, Gokul and Golok. So we were here in this, what is Vrindavan and all these holy dance, but we were there with Krishna. So that is going back to Godhead.
It's also my understanding, yeah. But I never seen that book, Vasuhotra Swami.
Yeah, that was 1995. There was a big controversy because
Yeah.
the Gaudiya different branches, they claimed that we are wrong.
Yeah.
And they wrote that GBC official statement. Because there was this, from spiritual world, even the leaves are not...
Not a leaf fall from the spiritual world for Vaikuntha.
He's explaining. I was traveling with him that time, always he explained about these different aspects of that. So, but it's all there in that book as well. So we just have to understand that is already spiritual world, Vrindavan. Yeah.
Mm.
In that sense, that was our... But we had something else to consider. We didn't sort of... In managerial terms, our priority list was not proper. So we kind of prioritized something else. So that's the sastrik,
Mm.
which includes that element that, going back to Godhead, that was, we were already there.
Yeah, back to God. Anything else? Okay, so I end here. We'll have Arctic, I think. Tattva Prabhu, you want to do the Arctic? Please? I think it's next on the program, no?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Jai. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Guru